Good morning. Rehabilitation and Social Services. The committee will now come to order. Thank you in the audience for joining us. I'm going to ask the clerk to open the roll for purposes of attendance. I can't seem to get mine to work. Okay.
Madam Chair.
I'm here. I promise I'm here. Okay, it worked that time. Okay, I will ask the clerk, do we have a quorum?
You have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Since this is our very first meeting of this session, I will ask my colleagues to briefly introduce themselves and tell us which districts they represent. So I will start down to my very far left with Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm not usually referred to as far left, but anyway. I'm Senator John Cosgrove, the 14th Senate District, which includes parts of Virginia Beach, Chesapeake, Suffolk, Isle of Wight, Portsmouth, Southampton, and the city of Franklin.
Ryan McDougall, live in Hanover.
Bryce Reeves, 17th District, Fredericksburg, Spotsylvania area.
Barbara Favola, representing parts of Arlington, Fairfax, and Loudoun County.
Mamie Locke, 2nd District, parts of the cities of Hampton, Newport News, Portsmouth, and a part of York County.
Scott Surville, represent the 36th Senate District, which is Fairfax, Prince William, Stafford, 2 wineries, and 2 craft distilleries. No craft distilleries and 2 craft breweries.
Monty Mason, 1st District. I represent the part of the peninsula Senator Locke lets me have.
Lionel Spruill, statewide.
Morning, Madam Chair. I'm Joe Morrissey, and I represent the 16th, which includes Hopewell and Petersburg, Richmond, Prince George, Dinwiddie.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jennifer Boysko, representing the 33rd Senate District, which is northwestern Fairfax County and eastern Loudoun County.
Good morning. I'm Jeremy McPike, represent the 29th Senate District, representing Manassas Park, and Prince William.
David's our attorney. I'm Bill D. Steff, Virginia Beach.
I will ask our staff to introduce themselves. David?
David May, Legislative Services.
Okay. Jillian?
Jillian Conway, Senate Committee Operations.
Okay. Hobie?
Thank you. I'm Hobie Lehman with Senate Committee Operations.
Our staff are very important. They really provide enormous support to the committee, to all of us. Okay. I have a few housekeeping motions that I'd like the committee to make. I would like a motion to re-refer to Judiciary Senate Bill 841, Senator Surville's bill, and Senate Bill 917, Senator Morrissey's bill. May I have that motion? Motion has been made and seconded. Will the clerk open the roll, please? Okay, I would like a motion to re-refer Senate Bill 1337, Senator Donovan's bill, to Education and Health. Okay, motion has been made and seconded. The clerk, please open the roll. Okay, and lastly, I would like a motion to re-refer Senate Bill 903, Senator Hanger's bill, Senate Bill 1133, Senator Evans' bill, to the Cannabis Subcommittee of Rehab and Social Services. I don't need everybody unanimously in favor of that? Very good. Okay. We don't need to go on the board. That's the Cannabis Subcommittee is a subcommittee of Rehab and Social Services. The chair is Senator McPike. Senator McPike will hold a hearing, and they will take testimony during that subcommittee hearing and come back to Rehab and Social Services with a recommendation on those 2 bills. The intent is that there be a robust debate in that subcommittee, so we won't be taking significant public comment when those bills come back to full committee. All right, thank you, colleagues. I have a few requests for sort of changes in order and how bills will be taken. I try to accommodate my colleagues as much as possible. So I will start with Senator Boysko, Senate Bill 1100.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it. This is probably going to be one of the easiest bills you have
Well,
all
we'll see.
morning. And I got the wrong, let's see. Yep, that's the right one. Okay. Madam Chair and members of the committee, SB 1100 is a very narrow expansion of the eligible institutions for mixed beverage carrier licenses at airport passenger lounges. Many of you and your constituents have visited passenger lounges at airports within or outside the Commonwealth, and most of these lounges are associated with or operated by airlines. However, the financial services industry is a growing player in this space. Two major financial institutions are preparing to open lounges at Dulles Airport in my community and National Airport. These spaces will generate revenues for the airports and provide exciting new amenities for Virginia residents and our visitors. The bill does two things. It adds definition to passenger lounge and authorizes financial institutions, their subsidiaries, or their contract lounge operators, partners approved by the airport authority to obtain a mixed beverage carrier license that is currently limited to airline. And I believe, Madam Chair, before I go further, we have some technical amendments that I would invite our clerk to present.
Madam Chair, it's really two amendments, but it turned out to be four because the section is set out twice, and it's just a slight narrowing of the definition of passenger lounge. Let's see. So the first amendment is on line 117.
Okay.
After any, strike Romanet 1. The next is also on line 117. After or lounge, strike the remainder of line 117 and through area on line 118. And then we make that same amendment again on line 649.
Move the amendments.
Second, all those in favor of accepting these amendments signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Amendments have been adopted. Are there any further amendments, David? Okay.
No.
Go ahead, Senator Boysko.
The lounge definition is designated to highlight the restricted access of these lounges and differentiate them from restaurants or other public venues at airports. It has an emergency clause because the lounges are scheduled to open in the first half of 2023, where we can all go travel and take part in them. In lieu of testimony, I'll reference the bill. It is supported. We have done our work, our homework. We have Peace in the Valley, the banking industry, IMWA, ABC, the wholesalers, the airlines, and the restaurant associations have all worked together to come to a consensus on this. And I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Thank you. Are there speakers who wish to make a comment on this bill and currently in the audience? Okay, there are no speakers in the audience. Is there anybody, excuse me, colleagues, is there anybody on Zoom wishing to comment on this bill?
For those in the Zoom room who would like to speak in support of the bill,
Okay.
please raise your hands electronically now. There are no speakers, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, colleagues, who wants to make the motion?
Move to report.
Motion has been made by Senator Boysko to report, seconded by Senator Mason. Please, will the clerk please open the roll, and we will vote.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Ayes
Okay, Senator
13,
Boyd.
no 0.
Your bill reports. Okay, now, I believe Senator Hashmi is next on the docket.
Senator Obenshain. You don't mind. Thank you, Senator Obenshain.
Senator Obenshain, you'll be next.
Good morning, and thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. This is Senate Bill 798, and it is coming from our Disability Commission, and the purpose is to change the language throughout the Virginia Code to the proper language of using the terms disability rather than handicap. But before I proceed to present the purpose of the bill, I did want to offer an amendment that some of our organizations and advocates have shared, and it is a simple amendment for lines 2,413 and line 2551 to change it back, the language back to the original language in order to match the federal code. And so I offer that amendment first.
Okay, all those in favor of accepting the amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposition? Hearing none. Your amendments have been adopted unanimously. Would you go ahead and proceed? I believe this was a recommendation from the Disability Commission.
Yes, Madam Chair. The commission that you chair, this is the product of many months of making sure that we are using proper language in Virginia code, and it is amending throughout the code the usage of the word handicap and substituting it with disability. The distinction is important for those in the disability community. Disability refers to a reduction of function or the absence of a particular body part or organ, whereas a handicap is viewed as a disadvantage that's resulting from a disability. So we want to identify the condition of the individual and not any limitations that may be presented. And so for that reason, the Disability Commission approved this change in code, and I would ask that the committee here today approve this recommendation from the Disability Commission.
Thank you, Senator Hashmi, for your presentation. It looks like we have a speaker or two. Please come forward.
Good morning, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Colleen Miller from the Disability Law Center of Virginia. Just want to say thank you to the Senator for bringing the bill and to the Disability Commission for considering it. We support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm Terry Morgan, the Executive Director with the Virginia Board for People with Disabilities. We echo Colleen's thanks to the Disability Commission. Senator Hashmi, the Virginia Board for People with Disabilities supports this bill.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak, either pro or con, for this bill in the audience? Seeing none, I will ask the clerk, Jillian, do we have anybody in the Zoom room?
For those in the Zoom room who would like to speak in support of the bill, please provide your testimony.
Okay, we have three speakers in the Zoom room. If you support the bill, please be very brief. If you oppose the bill, why don't you take 2 minutes to explain why? Go ahead.
Matthew Shapiro, you may speak in support of the bill or in opposition.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Matthew Shapiro with Virginia APSI. We also support the bill and view it as positive language that reflects good views of the disability community. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew.
Teresa Champion, you may provide your testimony.
Good morning, Teresa Champion with the Virginia Autism Project, and we support the bill, and thank you very much for presenting.
Thank you.
Tanya Milling, you may provide your testimony. Tanya Milling, you may provide your testimony.
Hi, yes, Tanya Milling, the Arc of Virginia. thank you so much to the senator and to the commission for bringing this forward. There were many self-advocates that were able to come and to speak at the commission, and on behalf of them as well as the ARC, we support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Does that conclude our speakers? Colleagues,
You have two more speakers.
let's follow a process.
Joellen Cosgrove, you may unmute.
Good morning. My name is Jewelyn Cosgrove. Pleased to be here on behalf of Melwood. I'm a constituent of Senator Boysko. Melwood is proud to support this language change and believe it's important that we do so now. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Teresa Champion, you may provide your testimony. Teresa Champion, you may provide your testimony.
I'm sorry, I've already spoken.
She did speak. Does that conclude our speakers?
That's all our speakers, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. All right, now colleagues, it's time for a motion. Motion has been made to report and it has been seconded. Will the clerk please open the roll?
Ayes 13, no 0.
Your bill report, Senator Hashmi.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, Senator Obenshain. Senate Bill 1233.
Madam Chairman, members of the committee, Senate Bill 1233 addresses advertising for marijuana. The movement to legalize marijuana is proceeding. This doesn't have any impact upon the direction that it's going to take. This bill is focused on one thing and one thing only, advertising to children. And it really doesn't break any new ground. We, over decades, have established in code restrictions concerning the advertising of alcohol to children. And what this bill does is it essentially collects the provisions dealing with advertising alcohol with respect to children and applies that to marijuana. It doesn't attempt to restrict advertising. A marketplace will come at some point, but we are already seeing efforts to advertise marijuana, and it is important whether we have the established framework for a marketplace or not, that we establish some restrictions on promoting marijuana use by children, adolescents, and preteens. And we do have a speaker. We have Dr. Gary Kirkelis from the Children's Hospital of Phoenix, who's been a national advocate for adopting restrictions concerning the advertising of marijuana with respect to children.
Is he in the audience or is he
He's online.
He's online, okay. Let me just first ask if anybody in the audience would like to speak to this bill. Do we have any speakers? Please keep your remarks to 2 minutes. And I'd like to hear first from those in favor of the bill and then from those who might oppose the bill.
Madam Chair, James Pickrell, Greenleaf Medical, the pharmaceutical processor in Central Virginia. We support the bill.
Thank you.
Morning, Madam Chair. J.M. Padini on behalf of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, and we support the bill.
Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Randy Pearson on behalf of Columbia Care, the licensed medical processor in HSA 5 in Hampton Roads. We support the bill and thank the patron.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Heidi Hertz, representing Dharma Pharmaceuticals in HSA 3 in Southwest Virginia. We support the bill.
Thank you. Is anybody in opposition to this bill? Okay, seeing none. Let's go to our virtual platform, and our expert witness will offer testimony.
Dr. Kirkles, please unmute.
Hello, thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Dr. Gary Kirkles. I'm a general pediatrician and spokesperson for the American Academy of Pediatrics. As a pediatrician, I've been very concerned, increasingly concerned about the way adolescents, teenagers view marijuana. Increasingly, they do not see it as a problem. I have patients that will use it before school and after school. And when I ask them, they don't see it as problematic. Part of this comes from the fact that it's been normalized. They see it all the time. Imagine if you're a teenager and you see cannabis billboards near your schools, you're going to begin to think it's not a problem. Unfortunately, it is. The developing teenage brain, when exposed to cannabis, will lower their ability to concentrate, their short-term memory, and it's also not surprising that we see decreased high school graduation rates. So what do we need to do? Well, the responsible thing to do is if you're going to legalize cannabis, that you also think about how it's advertised. Many states have done this. Illinois has cannabis advertising restrictions. Connecticut just passed a cannabis advertising restriction. It is the right thing to do. If you do not support, or if you feel that cannabis should be advertised freely, you have to be able to consciously say the statement. I think it's okay for a young child to see a cannabis gummy billboard next to their school, or I think it's okay for a high schooler to see a large cannabis billboard next to their high school. Or when I go to a sporting event, I think it's okay to have a conversation explaining to my young child what that cannabis billboard means. So I implore you to seriously prioritize children and to support Senate Bill 1233. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, I think that concludes the presentation and public comment. Discussions now with the committee. Okay, motion has been made to report and has been seconded. Will the clerk please open the roll? Your bill reports.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, very good. 2, 3. Okay, I have Senator Morrissey next. Is that correct, Jillian? Okay, Senator Morrissey, and you have 2 bills. One was re-referred to judicial. That's correct. So you've got 887.
Good morning, Madam Chair, fellow members of the committee. I have Senate Bill 887, which provides for limited use of solitary confinement. It's also known sometimes as isolated confinement, sometimes as restrictive housing. Solitary confinement is the practice of keeping an individual in either a 1 or a 2-person cell with no opportunity for interaction with other individuals. It usually happens because of one of 3 situations. 1, there are rule infractions by that inmate. Number 2, the person is awaiting disciplinary hearings. Or 3, for individual protection, the individual himself or a real or perceived threat. In both January of 2019 and July of 2021, the Virginia Department of Corrections claimed to have ended the use of solitary confinement or restrictive housing. It did not. A similar bill to this passed in 2021 and 2022 during the General Assembly session. There are several things that I think I'll address very quickly that this bill covers. This bill does not do away with solitary confinement completely. It does do away with prolonged solitary confinement. You may recall we heard one incident where an individual was held in solitary confinement up to 16 months. This bill says that an incarcerated person can be placed in solitary confinement to prevent imminent threat to himself or another individual for as long as 15 days during a 60-day period. The Virginia Department of Corrections will be required to have a plan for transitioning the incarcerated person out of solitary confinement at the earliest opportunity. There will be requirement that the individual be able to avail himself of medical and mental health evaluation. And the bill allows the facility administrator to place an incarcerated person in solitary confinement for the incarcerated person's protection with or without their voluntary consent, provided that there is a regular review of the decision. Nothing in this bill prevents the placement of incarcerated people in protective custody that does not protect other inmates or other correctional facility individuals. That is it. This is a product of a work group study. The General Assembly passed this legislation creating the work groups to study solitary confinement. Many of you, some of my on this own committee, myself, visited several prisons in the Department of Corrections, and as a result of that work study group, we now have this bill.
Thank you, Senator Morrissey. I expect there's some people in the audience who would like to speak to the bill. I would ask speakers to come forward, but please keep your remarks to 2 minutes. Those in favor of the bill, please come first, and those who may be in opposition may follow. Yes, sir.
Madam
Welcome.
Chair, Richard Walker, founder and CEO of Bridging the Gap in Virginia Reentry Program, who is a formerly incarcerated felon who spent 45 days in solitary confinement. A rose by any other name is still a rose, whether it be solitary confinement, restrictive housing, segregated housing unit, restorative housing, or protective custody. They even got an award to call it restorative housing. It's one thing to have a name and theory of it, but it's another thing to have the same practice in place. We're very much so in favor of this legislation that it will change the way the Department of Corrections either corrects or helps or provide mental health for them, as opposed to anything beyond 15 days is considered cruel and inhumane treatment. So we support of this legislation that it go through to change the narrative in the Department of Corrections in the state of Virginia. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair and committee. My name is Salim Kalfani, Criminal Justice Reform Organizer for the Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy, and also a part of the Virginia Coalition on Solitary Confinement, and we support Senate Bill 887. According to the Virginia Department of Corrections' own numbers, over 7,000 people were placed in solitary confinement units, known as all the names you've heard previously, between July 2018 and June 2019. We participated in the study group this summer. However, that did not resolve this issue for many, many reasons. The Commonwealth will benefit financially because the costs associated with solitary confinement are enormous. The mental health impact and outcomes for those persons who have been incarcerated and placed in solitary confinement will be better and safer for citizens in the Commonwealth of Virginia. The bill will make Virginia safer because most people that are incarcerated will return to society. You know, this bill will require Virginia prisons and jails to consider implementing safe and humane alternatives before implementing a dehumanizing and barbaric practice that is known to cause mental health issues. The Virginia Interfaith Center and Virginia Coalition on Solitary Confinement support this bill. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anybody in the audience in opposition to this bill? Hearing none. Do we have speakers on the virtual platform?
We have one, Madam Chair.
Okay, please let that speaker into the room.
Alexander Bailey, you may unmute to provide your testimony.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing me to provide testimony today. My name is Alexandra Bailey. I am the Senior Strategist at the Sentencing Project. My organization, along with Harvard Law, Brain, and Behavior, and our colleagues at William James College were part of the study with the Virginia Department of Corrections over this past summer. My organization and Harvard were reached out to provide best-in-class research practices to oversee this research project in order to ensure that the Commonwealth received information that was accurate, easily measurable, and digestible of whether or not solitary confinement was having a deleterious effect on MDOC, the people VADOC, the people incarcerated in it, and what the actual ROI. So as a dispassionate third party, what I can tell you is that not only should you support this bill, but the Virginia Department of Corrections was engaging in practices that were, quite frankly, dangerous and illegal. I have video footage of representatives of the Virginia Department of Corrections saying on camera that they were going to bypass both federal and Virginia law to conduct research on incarcerated persons in your state, which is a federally protected class, without appropriate oversight. Not only is this highly illegal, it is morally questionable. Everything that you have heard from people who have testified today about the effect on persons within the Department of Corrections who are incarcerated is not only true, but I actually have further questions about Virginia's practices.
Could you conclude? You're slightly over time. I've allocated 2 minutes. Sounds like you have a wealth of information. The committee welcomes written comments or any other documentation. So if you want to just quickly conclude your sentence or your thought, I think we get the gist of your remarks. And thank you for coming today.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In short, SB 887 is a bill that should be passed in the Commonwealth of Virginia with overwhelming support. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Would the clerk please call the next speaker?
Madam Chair, we have a few more speakers on Zoom.
I understand. I have asked that the speakers hold their remarks to 2 minutes. So please let the remaining speakers into the room consecutively.
Kenneth Hunter, please provide your testimony.
Yes.
My name is Kenneth Hunter from the Virginia Coalition on Solitary Confinement. I also serve with the individuals who carried out, were demanded the task of studying solitary confinement. It's long been held internationally that health issues, from isolation to personality disorders, to paranoia, and a list of other things. I am a survivor of said solitary confinement. I did over 3 years in solitary confinement, and I want to testify personally that I still deal with the trauma from that experience. Solitary confinement is inhumane, and the tactic of preservation through transformation, of changing the name but not changing the action, has to stop. The Commonwealth is so much better than this. We are so ahead of this, and we have an opportunity to make a stand and become a forerunner in the fight against solitary confinement. So as a part of the coalition, as one directly impacted, I stand in full support of this bill.
Thank you.
Thank you.
David Lindsay, you may provide your testimony.
Hello, I'm Reverend Dr. David Lindsay, Executive Director of Interfaith Action for Human Rights and a resident of Senator Favola's district. Interfaith Action for Human Rights supports Bill 887 because passing this bill into law will prevent the devastating consequences associated with long-term solitary confinement. Doing so will create more humane conditions of confinement while also improving the odds of incarcerated persons successfully re-entering society upon release. The world's diverse religious traditions long ago realized that people are meant to live in community with one another. And modern research, as you've already heard, has shown how extended isolation runs counter to this universal truth, and in particular, long-term solitary confinement, defined as more than 15 consecutive days, has been shown to have devastating physical, psychological, and social consequences, not just for incarcerated persons, but for society. In fact, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights has defined 15 or more consecutive days of solitary as torture, and no person, regardless of what they may have done, deserves to be tortured. And beyond the prison walls, what happens in Virginia's correction system has a direct impact on the Commonwealth as a whole. 95% of incarcerated persons are eventually released back into society, meaning that such returning citizens are your neighbors, your family members, your co-workers, and more. The trauma of long-term solitary confinement regularly prevents such returning citizens from being able to hold steady jobs, maintain healthy family relationships, and fully reintegrate into society. In fact, long-term solitary confinement has even been shown to shorten life expectancy. For reasons such as these, we at Interfaith Action for Human Rights strongly support this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Lindsay. Does that conclude the speakers?
We have one more, Madam Chair.
Okay, and then I think
Kimberly Snodgrass, please provide your testimony.
and please close the Zoom room after this speaker.
30 seconds.
Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. I'm Kimberly Jenkins Snodgrass, Senior Advisor of Criminal Justice Reform at Interfaith Action for Human Rights. SB 887 provides lawful relief to women housed at Fluvanna Correctional Center and men throughout Virginia who have been or are housed in prolonged solitary confinement. I'm here this morning, more importantly, because I'm an impacted parent. My son, Kevin Dwayne Snodgrass Jr., served 4 consecutive years in solitary confinement. Today, Virginia has national headlines, news media highlighting solitary confinement deaths and lawsuits. However, VDOC insists there's no such practice in Virginia. VDOC Virginia Solitary Confinement Study, Prison Behind the Walls, Why We Must Eliminate Prolonged Solitary Isolation in Virginia. I believe this report should serve as Virginia's benchmark for how solitary confinement is used in the state of Virginia. The report validates overusage of solitary confinement and psychological damage to incarcerated individuals. According to previous report published by ACLU Virginia, the average time a person spent in solitary confinement is 2.7 years. However, Nicholas Ryaz spent 12 plus years in solitary confinement because he simply did not speak English. In closing, as we approach the Martin Luther King federal holiday, I share this quote: "We must use time creatively in the knowledge that the time is right to do what's right. Vote yea to end prolonged solitary confinement, SB 887. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Senator Morrissey, briefly conclude.
Yes, Madam Chair. Let me give 30 seconds and I'll conclude. When you're trying to protect the civil rights of somebody or the constitutional rights or the mental health of an individual, I think that should be the stopping point, that that bill accomplishes that goal, protecting the mental health, the civil rights. But as Mr. Califani said, there is a monetary component, and quick factoid, Colorado closed a segregation facility for 315 people that were in solitary confinement, saving $13.6 million a year. And Illinois closed TAM Supermax in 2013, saved $26 million. A similar isolation pod in Mississippi was closed and saved $10 million a year. So there are fiscal savings, but that should be the last thing that we consider. We should focus on what everybody has spoken about, and that is protecting the civil rights, the mental health, and the dignity of individuals. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, committee.
Thank you, Senator Morrissey. Thank you for those who have spoken.
Madam Chairman.
Discussions with the board, with the committee. Yes, Senator McDougall.
If there's somebody from Department of Corrections, focusing on lines 34 through 38, just my question is, what if somebody that is in imminent threat of physical harm and that imminent threat is not resolved within 15 days, what do they do?
Madam Chair.
If I could hear from DOC, I'd like to know.
We would like to hear from the administrators of the prison system. Welcome. Please identify yourself.
Good morning. Rose Durbin, Virginia Department of Corrections. To answer the gentleman's question, at that point, based on the language in this bill, we would have to release the individual back into general population because the time frame is restricted based on the language in the bill.
Madam Chairman.
Senator McDougall.
So what if the threat is not over? How are you going to protect the individual?
Based on the language in the bill, we would have to release the individual back into general population.
Madam Chair.
Senator Morrissey.
That just that answer doesn't show the person has thoroughly read the bill. If you look at the bill, it's 15 consecutive days, and if the threat continues, I would tell the senator that that person could be reconfined, and that's made clear in the bill.
However, the bill also limits us to the ability to do that with one time within a 60-day period. So if the threat continues, you're essentially limiting the department's ability to maintain the threat.
Within that 60-day
Correct.
period. So there is a box here. Are there further questions or comments from the committee?
Madam Chair, I have a
Senator
question.
Serville.
Thanks. I noticed that one of the things in the bill I like is that it creates a document trail that requires the department to explain in writing its reasons for taking this, isolated confinement action. Would those records be available to the public? Would they be obtainable by FOIA or by the inmate themselves? I mean, how could somebody go and get the records to be able to establish, to see what the reasons were that somebody was held in isolated confinement without filing a lawsuit?
The information would be considered part of the inmate's institutional record, and those are typically exempted from FOIA. So to answer the other part of your question, I'm not sure.
Okay. Further question, Madam Chairman.
Senator Serville.
Thanks. So are those records obtainable by the inmate themselves?
That I'm not sure. I do believe the inmate does have access to their institutional classification authority documentation, which is the documentation that is completed that lets them know why they are in restorative housing as well as the path out of restorative housing. So they should have access to the information.
Okay, that may be another bill, Senator Serville. Any other comments? Of course, this bill will have to go to finance. So if we do make a motion to support, it would be support to re-refer.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator Spruill.
Move to report and refer to finance.
Motion has been made by Senator Spruill, seconded by Senator Locke. Will the clerk please open the roll?
What do you want to do?
Ayes 9, noes 3, abstentions 1.
Okay, Senator Morrissey, your bill reports, but it's re-referred to finance.
Yeah. Okay.
Next on our docket, Senator Mason, are you ready?
Sure. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair. Senate Bill 987. So a couple of years ago, we addressed guardianship and dealing with folks that were being released from hospitals. This is a result of a JLARC study that suggested periodic reviews of guardians that are appointed. It requires a full review after 1 year, and then it says periodic reviews every 3 years thereafter. Now, the JLARC report suggested that some judges are already requiring and suggesting reviews when they appoint, but if there are, the bill speaks to if there are circumstances on line 2425 that, the person is in a way that is not going to require periodic review. It can be waived after that first review after 1 year. In discussing this with folks, they came up with a scenario that I didn't think of, and that was a parent had been taking care of an adult for their whole lives, and the parent begins to slip. And that someone can have a periodic review that says that, my mother is now having a hard time being my guardian and taking care of me. So it kind of reversed the way I was thinking about it. But, and it also speaks to if the hospitals and convalescent homes, they don't have to be present for the hearing, but the judge can require, but still, you'd have that one guaranteed hearing after a year and then periodic reviews every 3 years thereafter.
Okay, that's your bill.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, do you have speakers? If there's anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of this bill, come forth. I would ask you to keep your comments to 2 minutes.
Oh, I can do better than that. Colleen Miller for the Disability Law Center of Virginia. We thank Senator Mason for his persistence in these reforms. There are many that are needed. This is a very vital one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Jennifer Fedora with the Virginia Network of Private Providers, and we strongly support this bill. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Emily Hardy with Virginia Poverty Law Center, and we also support this bill.
Thank you. Mr.
Madam
Pickrell?
Chair, members of the committee, James Pickrell with the Virginia League of Social Services Executives, and we support the bill also.
Very good. Is there anybody in the audience in opposition to the bill? Please step forward. Okay. I will ask the clerk, do we have anybody in our virtual platform that wishes to speak to the bill?
For those on Zoom who would like to speak on the bill, please raise your hand at this time. There are no speakers, Madam Chair.
Okay.
We have one speaker, Madam Chair.
Okay, let's wait for the one speaker. Please let that speaker into the room and then close the virtual platform.
Deborah Riggs, please provide your testimony. Deborah Riggs, please unmute to provide your testimony.
I apologize. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the
Good morning.
committee. NASW, National Association of Social Workers Virginia Chapter, strongly supports this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think that concludes the presentation. This bill will have to be re-referred to Finance if we choose to report it out.
Second.
Okay, motion has been made by Senator McPike. Who did the second over here? Okay, there we go. Senator DeStef seconded the motion. I ask the clerk to open the roll.
Boo.
Ayes 13, no 0.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee.
Thank you, Senator Mason. I will be the last presenter, and I have quite a few bills. But before I move on, I think it's time to introduce our pages. I'd like these two energetic young men to stand up and introduce themselves, and we'd be happy to give you many accolades. Go ahead.
My name's Jansen Luke Sproul, and I'm from Mechanicsville.
And where are you from?
Mechanicsville.
Okay, thank you. Welcome.
My name is Grayson Parsley, and I'm also from Mechanicsville.
Oh, very good. Thank you. Welcome. We're delighted to have you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm next and last on the docket, and I will ask Senator Locke to preside over the hearing while I go down and make my presentation.
Okay, Senator Favola.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to just go through my bills in sort of numerical order. So I draw your attention to Senate Bill 788, and there is an amendment to that bill. So I will ask the clerk to distribute the amendment. The amendment really does two things. It picks up an authority that we had overlooked in the first draft and made some technical changes in terms of formatting.
If we could report the amendment.
May I have a copy of the amendment as well? Oh, you can keep yours. I think I know what you did. It's online. Okay. Madam Chair, what this bill does is it transfers the authority to issue cannabis medical licenses from the Board of Pharmacy to the newly created or recently created Cannabis Control Authority. All it does is a transfer of that authority. So any responsibilities that the Board of Pharmacy had regarding the issuance of licenses would be transferred with this bill. I know it's a lengthy bill. If you want to read page 17 and go down to the enactment language, line 1018 to 1041, I think that sort of captures the essence of this bill. So any regulations governing the pharmaceutical processors that were promulgated or amended by the Board of Pharmacy prior to July 1, 2023 will remain in effect. And then, of course, the Cannabis Control Authority would move forward issuing further regulations. We think there's some significant advantages to having one entity that has authority over all of the cannabis and marijuana related activities. It's easier for constituents to understand. It's easier for those who are expecting licenses and are in the marketplace. It's easier for consumers to understand, and it is also easier for oversight groups. That essentially completes my presentation. I don't have any speakers.
The amendment.
Madam Chair, I'd move the substitute be adopted.
It's been moved and seconded that the substitute be adopted. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, we now have the substitute before us. Are there those here in support of the bill?
Morning, Madam Chair. Hunter Jamerson for Jushi, the medical cannabis processor operating in Health Service Area 2. We support this bill. Appreciate Senator Favola bringing this bill. Appreciate the technical advice given by the Cannabis Control Authority and the Board of Pharmacy. This is a natural progression of medical cannabis programs to move to a single THC regulator. Just emphasize, there's no new language in this bill. This is existing code moving from the Drug Control Act into Title 4.1. So we hope you'll support the bill.
Thank you. We have a line, so.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, James Pickrell with Greenleaf Medical, the pharmaceutical processor for HSA4, and we also support the bill.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Randy Pearson on behalf of Columbia Care, the licensed medical processor in HSA5. We support the bill and thank the patron.
Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Heidi Hertz with Dharma Pharmaceuticals and HSA3. We support the bill.
Good morning, Madam Chair. J.M. Padini on behalf of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. We support the bill.
Thank you.
Morning, Madam Chair. Chris McDonald with True Leave. We want to thank the patron for bringing this important legislation and are pleased to support the bill. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Caroline Chern, Executive Director at the Virginia Board of Pharmacy. The administration has no position on this bill.
Thank you. Are there those here in opposition?
Madam Chairwoman, Todd Gackey with the Family Foundation. I think it's no secret that we are opposed to legalization and commercialization of marijuana, high-potency THC products. In this case, we just don't think that it is wise to move this into the Cannabis Control Authority, keeping it, we need to not conflate the two, keep it under an authority that has some expertise in this area. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Are there those online who wish to speak?
For those in the Zoom room who would like to speak on the bill, please raise your hands electronically at this time. There are no speakers, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Move to report and
Madam
refer
Chairman,
to substitute to finance.
I have a question for council.
Okay. Okay, question?
Yeah, David, I noticed in her bill that it repeals the 21st enactment of chapters 550 and 551, which are have to do with the regulations that the Board of Pharmacy issued. And have new regulations been issued, like in the correct part of the administrative code to cover this? I mean, or is all that taken care of? Is all that sewn up? Because this says Cannabis Control Authority is going to issue new regs, and I just want to make sure that it happened. That takes like 2 years, I know.
Madam Chair, Senator Serval. Yeah, so basically, the first part, repealing those prior enactments, we had to do that because this language is a little bit different than what we had initially said. So the easier way to do it was just go ahead and strike those. They were about the regulations transferring to the CCA. And so the new scheme is what you'll see down in enactment number 4, starting on 1188, which basically what it says is that the regulations are going to transfer to the CCA, and then the CCA is going to come up with its own regulations that are based on the same rules to just, replace the references to the Board of Pharmacy with the CCA, et cetera. And in the time being, they'll use the current rules, and they do have an APA exemption for the promulgation of this regulation, so they can get it done quickly.
Okay, so this, further question, Madam Chair.
Senator.
So this language in 4 will allow the Cannabis Control Authority to enforce the Department of Pharmacy's regs, even though the regs don't say that?
Madam Chair, Senator Serval, that'd be correct. We also have language in there to clarify that the CCA is vested with all powers and duties that were formerly vested prior to July 1st in the Board of Pharmacy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Additional questions? The motion.
Move the report refer to substitute finance.
Okay, does this have to go to finance? I don't see that.
Yes, it does.
Okay, all right. Okay, the motion is to report the substitute and re-refer to finance, and it has been seconded. All those in favor, please vote.
Ayes 11, noes 1, abstentions 1.
Ayes 11, noes 1, and 1 abstention. It is reported and re-referred. Okay,
Thank you,
your next bill,
Madam.
Senator Revolt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I turn your attention to Senate Bill 797. This is a very straightforward bill. It changes, let me just see. It changes slightly the composition of the State Board on local and regional jails. It moves them from 9 to 11. It adds 1 former administrator, such as a superintendent or warden, and then it does add somebody who is currently a mental health expert working for the mental health agency. And that is this bill, and I carried this on behalf of the State Board of Local and Regional Jails. I
Are
guess
there
you're
any
all aware that
questions?
the State Board does have the responsibility of issuing standards and guidelines for the operation of our local and regional jails. That's my bill.
Are there any questions to Senator Favola? Those in
I
support?
do have a speaker.
Good morning, Madam Chairman and members of the board. Thank you very much. My name is Colonel Derek Omrode, Superintendent, Rockbridge Regional Jail, Vice President of Virginia Association of Regional Jails, and we are in full support of this bill.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Elizabeth Holmes with the Virginia Sheriff's Association, and we support this bill.
Thank you. Are there any persons in opposition? Anyone in the Zoom room?
For those in the Zoom room who would like to speak on the bill, please raise your hands electronically. We have no speakers, Madam Chair.
Any questions? Senator Morrissey.
Senator Favola,
Yes.
one quick question. It's increasing from 9 to 11. I don't want to be nitpicking, but you're adding both a former sheriff and a former superintendent, and it seems like an appointment of an additional member who is an expert in public mental health services.
The current statute already guarantees either a sheriff or superintendent. So one of them is already guaranteed. I'm adding another administrator, so that's only a +1 on that category. And then I'm adding a +1 in the mental health area.
Thank you.
It's been moved and seconded that SB 797 be reported. All those in favor, please so indicate.
Ayes 13, no 0.
Ayes 13, no 0. That bill is reported. Next bill, Senator Favola.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I draw your attention to Senate Bill 809, and there is a substitute.
Let's adopt a substitute.
Of their amendments. Do you want to read the amendments, David, or did you prepare paper? Okay.
So there's a substitute with amendments.
No, my apologies, Madam Chair. They're line amendments, very simple, but they need to be.
To the original bill?
To the original bill.
Okay,
So we're
so
calling
they're
them
just
amendments.
Okay.
Yes.
Madam Chair, there are 4 line amendments. A couple of them are just some small wording adjustments, and then we add a reporting enactment at the end. So the first one is on line 23. After reserved, we're going to strike the word solely. The second is on line 27. After consumer, strike of the products, insert that the product contains. Number 3 is on line 27 after alcohol, strike content. And then the fourth is to, at the very end of the bill, after line 147, insert a second enactment clause that would read that the Virginia ABC Authority shall report to the chairman of the Senate Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services and the House Committee on General Laws by November 1st, 2025, regarding implementation of the provisions of this act, including the number and nature of any violations and the manner in which such violations were addressed.
Okay, a motion on those amendments. Moved and seconded that those amendments be adopted. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, those amendments are adopted.
Madam Chair, what this bill does is it would require that when alcohol is on shelf space at a retail operation, that there be a clearly discernible location reserved for the alcohol beverages, and that in brand names that may be similar that have an alcohol beverage on it be clearly labeled. And they want to ensure that non-alcoholic beverages are not next to alcoholic beverages. So those are sort of the three points. I think it's important to know that it's really the ABC wholesalers who will go in and actually do the labeling. We're talking about spaces on grocery store shelves. The intent is to ensure that consumers completely understand that the yellow can that has alcohol in it is labeled, and the yellow can that does not have alcohol in it that might look similar is apart from that has the alcohol in it. There's a lot of different permutations now of alcoholic beverages, and it's confusing, and we just want better labeling. ABC has a history of always working with store owners. We want success. We consider folks to be our partners. We try to bring everybody on board. There'll be some slight anxiety on the part of some individuals representing grocery chains. But ABC has agreed to work with them, issue a circular more clearly explaining the requirements. And then, of course, the practice is really on the ABC wholesalers to put the label up. So that's the bill.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Other questions? Senator Reeves.
Senator Favolo, why did they take the word solely out if you're trying to make them, when it says reserved solely for alcohol beverages? I think we took that out. Is that right, David?
We took it out because there was some debate over what that actually meant or whether it added anything to the language.
Did it add, Madam Chair?
So you may want to ask.
Senator Reeves.
Was that additional restriction, so it closed it down so retailers could choose the spaces they want, but clearly delineate what they wanted? Like if they wanted to move a section of the store, so it's a little more versatile for them to do that, but still keep it separate from everything else?
I apologize. I was just looking.
I'm getting head nods behind you, so I'm assuming. Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chairman.
Yes.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
may my speakers come forward, or do you have?
Just a question. Senator, in your bill, the way you described it, there are a lot of companies that are making non-alcoholic beer, like St. Pauli's Girl, any Heineken's making a non-alcoholic beer, so to speak. Will your bill require those products that do not contain alcohol to be sold separately?
There's nothing in this bill that controls the amount of alcohol. The only thing this bill talks about is the placement of alcoholic beverages juxtaposed with non-alcoholic beverages. This is a display bill. Has nothing to do, we don't care what the alcoholic content is. That's irrelevant in this bill. We're just saying that alcoholic beverages cannot be placed next to non-alcoholic beverages. Is that fair? Why don't you come forward?
Senator Cosgrove, Phil Boykin with the Virginia Beer Wholesalers Association. For the non-alcoholic beers, they're actually specifically exempted from this because what this is really targeted for is what crossover products. Crossover products are defined as a product that consumers primarily understand to be a non-alcoholic product. They're now entering the alcoholic space. So,
Thank you. Are there those in support of the bill?
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Ken Hutchison here on behalf of Anheuser-Busch, here to support the senator's bill. I think it's important to note that this is a theme that I think this committee is going to experience quite a bit in the coming years. The alcohol marketplace is transforming. It is innovating. The creativity and imagination of the industry is quite impressive. But with that transformation and innovation, it requires ABC regulatory authority, regulatory input to modernize with the industry. A static environment for regulations is not a healthy marketplace for consumers. This bill really does get at consumer protections and consumer information. And clearly, with these non-alcoholic products, for decades, now entering the space of alcoholic products, we want to make sure that children and folks that don't intend to buy alcohol are protected from that. And by putting them in the right place with the proper signage, we believe that's a good consumer measure. Appreciate your support.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Favola. I'm Bill Boykin on behalf of the Virginia Beer Wholesalers Association. We strongly support this legislation and thank her for bringing this public safety measure forward. As Ken stated, we're in transition as these new products come forward, and we want to make sure that our kids aren't drinking them. Also, you may hear from some folks later on about signs and the burdens on the signs that they have on placing the signs. Let me tell you, in the vast majority of the cases, it's the wholesalers who's putting up the sign. It's the wholesaler who is moving the product and placing the product. So just stating that for the future.
Thank you.
My name is Ron Owens. I represent the Virginia Assembly of Independent Baptists. Never did I think I'd be standing in support of a bill that the alcoholic beverage company stands to support a bill. But as a pastor, as a parent, and as a director of Virginia Assembly of Independent Baptists, we support this bill. I am grateful for it as a parent because I do not want my children to accidentally grab an alcoholic beverage. It has been a concern of mine for some time. And also, as a pastor, we teach to refrain from drinking alcohol, and this makes it much easier for our parishioners to identify. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone here in opposition?
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Melissa Aslan with the Virginia Food Industry Association, representing a lot of the chain grocery stores, as Senator Favola mentioned. As she said, we support many provisions of this bill, including separating these products. A lot of my companies are already doing that and believe it's best practice to ensure non-confusion for customers and for kids. However, we have concerns with the signage requirement. We believe, again, as kind of the wholesalers mentioned, because they're coming into our stores and putting up displays and signage, we, though, ultimately are liable for when ABC comes in and checks the stores. So we have concerns with that language for that reason. Also, we believe that there are already strong practices in place that help youth not access these products. We have strong ID checks at checkout, and that is the number one surefire way to make sure kids are not purchasing these products. The other thing I'll mention is obviously the sign is not leaving with the product. It is, once it gets home, it's really the label that will determine whether or not there's confusion for kids and for adults that are maybe accidentally purchasing something that they didn't mean to. So we do support the first portion of the bill, but we do not support number little I2 with the signage. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I want to thank the Senator for working with a lot of the stakeholders on some of the language. We represent I'm Zach Lamaster. We represent the Virginia Asian American Store Owners Association. So it's about 700 small business owners in Virginia who own well over 1,000 convenience stores. A lot of you are more mom and pop. non-chain stores. One of the concerns we have is not with the implementation of it now, but maybe potentially in the future. There's a portion here that says it can't be immediately adjacent. We've talked to ABC about how this will be enforced, and currently the way they're going to work with us on it is you have your two freezers next to each other, and if there's a similar product, it can't go from one freezer to the other in a straight line. So we can easily just kind of shift from one freezer to the other to make sure they're not touching. The concern is, as everyone said, that the market is changing. If you remember a few years ago, White Claws came out, and now there's 50 different seltzers. So we're just concerned about if this continues to be a product type that other companies try to replicate, we're going to run out of shelving space and how we kind of do our freezers, because they're very limited in a lot of our stores. But that's our major concern.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Madam Chair. Madam
Anyone in Zoom?
For those on Zoom who would like to speak on the bill, please raise your hand electronically. There are no speakers, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Senator Sproul?
thank you. Is anyone here from ABC?
John Spear.
I don't know, is John Daniel here? John?
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. John Daniel with Virginia
Good morning.
ABC.
How you doing this morning?
I'm well. Hope you are, sir.
I'm looking, do you have an example of a manner of purchasing of ABC products that could be marketed to kids? I've heard something, a buzz ball.
Buzzball is an alcohol product, and it is, frankly, it's one of the sort of catalysts for the suggested change, I believe. There have been instances, or an instance, where a Buzzball product in a major retail outlet was placed with other candies and things. A 9-year-old girl purchased that Buzzball for her mother for Mother's Day because it was in a place that looked like other nice Mother's Day presents. That's an extraordinary circumstance. And yes, what Ms. Assalone says with respect to point of sale and checking ID, in that instance, the product was in fact sold. I don't know what the clerk's activities were with respect to ID check or whether the point of sale kicked it for a check or not, but it was a product that was sold. Other instances, you have ice creams that contain alcohol that are in a freezer right next to ice cream that doesn't contain alcohol. Very confusing. And while the administration doesn't have a position on this, it is a problem that Senator Voisko and the wholesalers and other manufacturers have brought to the committee and to the Assembly for consideration.
Thank you. Madam Chair.
Senator,
did
you finish, Senator?
Yes, the Baptist
Sorry.
preacher.
I meant Senator Favola, I forgot. My
Chair.
good friend, Senator Favola.
Okay, great.
Very
Madam
good.
Chair, did the Baptist preacher who was spoken a while ago, I was really surprised, bless his heart. I'm Methodist, by the way. And so I concur with what he was talking about. Thank you so much.
Senator Reeves?
So, John.
Yes, sir.
The concerns that they brought up with the small C-store owners, when I walk into Wawa, it starts with water, then it goes to coffee, and then tea, then energy drinks, and then there's no differentiation other than the doors, and you look at the brands and what's there. I kind of get where you're going with the grocery stores, but how are you going to discern what this says, an area immediately adjacent in those small cooler sections where they have those? Are they going to put like fluorescent bright orange on those doors and say these are beer, or how are you going to do that?
Well, I mean, we've certainly realized the limited space in C-stores, but nonetheless, a simple sign, if you have, most of your alcohol products in a case, and then you may have a case that doesn't obviously have alcohol products, simple signage on the freezer doors, cold doors for alcohol products doesn't seem to be a huge burden, given the issues that have been raised by the proponents of the bill
Madam
relative
Chair.
to the marketplace.
Senator Reeves?
Knowing that C-store business, I grew up in it. You're going to have hard displays at the end of end caps where the beer wholesalers come and they stack warm beer, and then everybody has cool beer somewhere, or they have a separate, some of these C-stores have a whole separate section just for that. But I really am concerned, is ABC going to come out with some guidance, reference that, so there's a standardization, so, you know, we're not leaving it up subjectively to whoever's coming in from ABC, your agents, and go, I don't think that's going to cut it.
Thank you. It's a good question and an opportunity. Chief Kirby could speak better to this than I, but I'll give it a try. We will have certainly guidance and process practices in place for the agents that are visiting the licensed establishments. That has proved to be a pretty successful program. And we can certainly issue circular letters as we move forward to accommodate. We're certainly not trying to hurt any kind of small business or retailer. We're just trying to work, I think, in concert with those folks to create a safer environment for, as the proponents have indicated, an incredibly fast changing marketplace. Yes, sir.
Senator Morrissey?
Thank you, Mr. Daniel. The example that you gave, I'm assuming what occurred was that daughter bought an alcoholic beverage from mom. Mom gets it, and it wasn't caught at the checkout line. Not being critical, but it wasn't caught there. And then mom then contacted ABC when she realized that minor daughter was able to purchase it. Was that?
That's precisely the facts.
Final question, Madam Chair, for Phil. Phil, I want to make sure that I understand it. Right now, can a non-alcoholic beer be sold next to an alcoholic beer if it, that's my first question.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So this bill then would still allow that to happen so long as there was a refrigerator, separate refrigerator between the alcoholic beer and the non-alcoholic beer and signage. Is that right?
Yes, sir, but more specifically, if you're asking for a traditional non-alc beer, like a St. Pauli's that Senator Cosgrove referenced, that is exempted from that because someone's intending to buy a beer that just doesn't have alcohol. What this is intended to do is to focus on the products that consumers identify as non-alcoholic but might necessarily understand to have alcohol in them. And so the wholesaler or the retailer would actually have to state this is an alcoholic product and a sign, whether they would say this is a beer, this is a wine, or this has alcohol.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Just think of it as almost like Mountain Dew. Some of the Mountain Dew products have alcohol in it, but some do not. And people may just quickly go into a store, a low-information consumer like myself, and grab the alcoholic product when I meant to grab the non-alcoholic product. And I'm not carded anymore, so I would walk out the door. I would walk out the door with my the product I didn't want. So we know that's
Senator McDougal.
I find it hard to believe that Senator Favola is not carded anymore.
Aw.
Okay, if you could wrap up, Senator Pavone.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I just draw your attention to the last line amendment that we made, that ABC shall report back to the Rehab and Social Services and General Laws on the implementation of the act. If we see that there are problems, we're going to tweak this. But the stakeholders want to make this work. I want to make a point that the grocery stores, Melissa Aslan, who is up here, the Asian convenience stores, everybody in our stakeholder group agreed with the intent of the bill. There was just a little anxiety over how it would be implemented, but nobody disagreed. that we should not be clear and helpful to consumers. So with that, Madam Chair, I respectfully ask that the committee support the bill.
Senator Morrissey.
I'm trying to make a motion to pass the report, but first I'll just say this. Listening to all the people that spoke as well as the members, there may be a few hiccups along the way that we're going to have to sort out. I think that's the reason for the report back in November of 2025. But the intent is to make sure that people that want to buy an alcoholic beer can, a non-alcoholic beer can. And I think the signage component of this bill helps us meet that goal. So perhaps we may tweak it down the road, perhaps in the next 3 years. I think that there's reason to ask that.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded that Senate Bill 809 be reported as amended. All those in favor, please so vote. And those opposed, no.
Ayes 13, no 0.
Ayes 13, no 0. That bill is reported. I believe you have one more, Senator Favola.
I have two more, Madam
more,
Chair, but
okay.
I will try to be quick. I will ask you to draw your attention to Senate Bill 820. This is very straightforward. What this bill does is it sets up a Virginia opioid and substance use disorder fund for our local and regional jails to draw down. It would be a grant program. The intent is to help facilitate the implementation of more comprehensive services in the detox area, medically assisted detox, follow-up treatment, good transition plans, any of those functions that help in the opioid or substance use disorder sphere would be eligible once the grant program is written. This comes to you from many stakeholders. The Sheriff's Association are very interested in this, and there are other stakeholders that want to help jails implement a more robust detoxification and, in some cases, treatment program for inmates who are in our jails.
Are there those here in support of Senate Bill 820?
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Katie Boyle with the Virginia Association of Counties in support of this bill. Resources for jails is something we're very interested in. I would just mention the standards for behavioral health for local and regional jails that are working their way through the regulatory process speak to identification and treatment of individuals with substance use disorders, and we think this would be a way to help jails comply with those standards once they're in place. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Again, good morning, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. Derek Omerode, Rockbridge Regional Jail Superintendent, Vice President, Virginia Regional Jail Association. I do want to first thank Senator Favola for allowing our association to be a part of your work group. We worked with her directly regarding this bill, and we certainly are in support of it. So thank you for your time, and thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Good morning again. Elizabeth Holmes from the Virginia Sheriff's Association. We likewise worked with Senator Favola on this bill, and we are in support.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman.
Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you. Senator Favola,
Yes, sir.
shouldn't this be in finance?
This will be going to
It will
finance.
go
I
in
would like a robust vote here and then
Okay.
re-refer it to finance. But yes, we have been talking to the appropriators.
Okay, great.
But thank you.
Anyone in opposition? Anyone on Zoom?
For those on Zoom who would like to speak on the bill, please raise your hand electronically. We have no speakers, Madam Chair.
It's been moved and seconded that Senate Bill 820 be reported and re-referred to finance. All those in favor, please so indicate.
Ayes 13, no 0.
Ayes 13, no 0. Senate Bill 820 has been reported and re-referred to finance.
Madam Chair, I would ask the committee to now focus on Senate Bill 923. This is the last bill I'll be presenting today. So this is a foster care prevention program, and what this bill does is it outlines a pathway for families to allow relatives or victim kin to care for their child while they're in crises. So if a child is at risk of being removed from his or her home, this bill would allow the Board of Social Services to determine if a protective custody order would be in order or if a longer-term placement would be needed with a relative or victim kin. And if that's the case, then an agreement would be entered with Child Protective Services. The family would be eligible for case management and other services, and they would be eligible for financial support, and that's really important. As you know, we have a relative maintenance support program. It was funded last year and actually got funding for the entire biennium. And the dollars were not really drawn down because we didn't have a framework in place. And I very much want to see this happen. You should know that relatives and victim kin, when they do take in a child, that they know the child has a much better outcome than going into the foster care system. It reduces trauma. The child is more comfortable. The child's more apt to thrive, maybe remain in his or her own school system, maintain his or her own circle of friends. It's just a much better program. I worked with Virginia Poverty Law Center, Voices for Children, Child Protective Services folks, of course. So I don't know of any opposition to the bill.
Okay, those in support, quickly.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Allison Gilbreth with Voices for Virginia's Children. We strongly support this bill and thank Senator Favola for her hard work off season to get this bill right. I've come before this committee several times talking about kinship care. This committee has helped the numbers go from 5% in Virginia to nearly 20%. I think with this bill, we'll get to the national average. I also want to quickly list some of the other organizations who aren't here who are also in support of the bill, including C2Adopt, Encircle, Equality Virginia, Hope Tree, Court-Appointed Special Advocates, Family Focused Treatment Association, Virginia Kids Belong, Greater Richmond SCAN, DePaul Community Services, and a few others, but I'll thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Valerie LaRue from Virginia Poverty Law Center. We also support this bill, and we thank Senator Favola. We had some concerns about children being in this program without clear understandings of how long they might be there or how the parents might get their children back or what services would be provided to the parents. And so the work that was done by Senator Favola with others throughout the off-season, I think made this a good bill, and we can support it now. So thank you very much, and thank you, Senator Favola.
Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee, Cassie Bodie, all the Children's Home Society. We also support this bill.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, James Pickrell with the Virginia League of Social Services Executives, and we also support the bill.
Thank you. Any opposition? Moved and seconded that Senate Bill 923 be reported and re-referred to Finance.
Madam Chair,
Senator
let me start early. You know, when you say going to the finance, that scares me. That doesn't mean you're going to kill a bill, right? Because whenever I heard something.
It says if report, re-refer to Finance.
There is funding in the budget, so
When
this.
I heard that word finance, that means kill.
Not always.
Not always.
Okay. Please vote.
Ayes 13, no 0.
Ayes 13, no 0. That bill is reported and re-referred to Finance. And I believe
Thank
that
you.
exhausts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've completed my docket.
All right.
Okay, thank you. I will ask Mr. May, do we have anything else to come before the committee?
That's it, Madam Chair.
Okay. Colleagues, do you have any announcements or anything to come before the committee? All right, hearing none, the committee shall rise.